All right, we're live, guys. So we have a very special guest today for our second video of week three. We've got Lindsey Dykstra here. Hey, Lindsey.
Hey,
Hi,
Lindsay.
everyone. Thanks for
Welcome.
having me.
Yeah.
We're glad you're here. Thanks for taking the time. So just so everyone knows a little bit about you, you are the number one solo realtor at Five Star Real Estate in 2025, and you've been in that position before. You've been
Hmm.
there a couple times. So you seem to have a history of keeping busy, and you must be doing a really, really, really good job for your customers to keep ending up here. So we're super excited to dig into your process, how you do it, how you talk to your customers, how you price out homes. Like, I think everyone's curious. And by the way, I should add, you do all of this by yourself,
I'm
sort
a
of.
solo agent, right? But
Yep.
right, I
You
have,
have a TC sometimes. You have a TC occasionally. You're training a new one, I think I heard.
no, I actually don't, I've never had a transaction
Okay, so no
coordinator.
TC.
No transaction coordinator. So a long time ago, I asked myself, what do I not enjoy doing? And it's marketing, like social media, just honestly, I don't love it. So
Hmm.
I have two people who help with like that end of the marketing.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
But the rest of it is just Lindsay is showing all the homes, writing up all the offers, doing all the negotiations,
Yep.
following up with title
Yep.
companies, talking to
Yep.
lenders. You're it. You're the show.
Correct.
That's
Which
a lot. So it's a lot to
life
manage. So that's also quite amazing.
it is, but that's kind of how my brain is wired. I don't know. I think if I had a transaction coordinator, and by the maybe someday I will. So, but to me, it keeps my head in the game, and I just keeps me focused. And honestly, I think
Hmm.
I work best when I'm when I'm busy. Like I operate on the best like cylinder. So it's
Yeah.
just how I am. That's how I run my life. It's how I run my business. And yeah,
Okay. Well, now that everyone, and so anyways, I just wanted to make sure everyone understood that you're like, you don't have this big team behind you. You don't have a
yeah.
bunch of support necessarily. You're kind of rocking and rolling. So you are in it. You are like fully engaged here. So, all right, Lindsay. So let's just kind of jump into it. You're aware that we've been like chatting all month about pricing,
Hmm.
and I think we should just kind of start from the top with you and just sort of like let's ease into it and tell us what happens. You get a phone call, former customer calls you, or referral calls you, or
Hmm.
something and hey, Lindsay, need you to come out to the house and talk to us about something. We're thinking of making a move. What's your first? Run us through what you do.
Okay. So I get that phone call. Someone wants to meet right away over the phone. I'm asking them, just learning a little bit about like their situation, just very minimum. Like, why do you want to move? So I want to know their pain points, right? So whenever someone wants to move, there's a pain point. If it's they are moving to relocate, if they're moving because they're having another baby, if they're moving because of a divorce or whatever the situation. I want like a little bit of context before I go there.
Hmm.
Then I
Hmm.
ask just a little bit of questions about their home. And I'm keeping it pretty minimal because remember on the phone, everyone is trying to, their home is always worth like they're trying to sell us on the value of their home, right? So
Right.
you get that from the very beginning. And then I'm gathering as much information, just kind of like what Micah and Jeff said, right? Like you're running
Hmm.
comps, you're knowing the area. You're trying to, before I go there, I'm looking at the active listings. I'm looking at expired, like ones that have recently expired, because I'm curious why.
Okay.
I like, so if anyone knows me, I'm someone who picks up the phone. I call people, I'm calling other agents of like, tell me your activity, homes that are pending, sold, active, just trying to gather a little bit of the information. And then when I meet with the clients, I have the information. Obviously, like I know what's happening in the market. I know what the days on, what is the average days on market? What is our inventory levels? But I don't talk pricing right away. That's
Hmm.
not, I don't do that.
Okay.
That's what everyone wants to know, but I, I, I won't do that until when I meet with the person right away, my first thing part of their listing, we walk the home and I take
Okay.
lots of notes and I want them to see me taking lots of notes. I ask a ton of questions because if they describe how people describe their home over the phone typically and what it is in person is a very different.
Hmm.
And then we sit down and we talk and I build a lot of rapport with someone because to me, pricing a home, it's not about the highest number. It's about the strategy. It's
Hmm.
about what is their needs? What is that, those pain points we talked about? And then we're creating a plan. And a lot of times we don't even talk pricing. they might ask,
You're
we're
planning
talking,
everything else but price to
yes,
start.
yes, 100%.
I
Because,
think that's interesting.
yeah,
Because, and I'll tell you why I find that so interesting, because like you're getting them to like agree with you about many, many, many things first, which is really fascinating. So you're talking about timing, you're talking about staging or
mm-hmm,
planning or things like this. So you're getting them going like nodding with you, which is really
hmm,
interesting.
hmm,
You're winning them over before you discuss price, which I think is just a really interesting tip. Um, that's a good trick. That's good.
hmm. Well, remember is our job is, this is a relationship business,
Hmm.
right? It's to me a number, yes. Like, are people driven by numbers? Of course. But at the end of the day, it's about the relationship, and we can get to the number because I'm going to talk through the whole strategy and then we'll discover what, at the end, like where are we listing. But people are hiring us, they don't want to be sold. No,
Hmm.
no one really wants to be sold. When they talk about salespeople, like, oh, a sale, like, I actually hate that word because
Hmm. Yeah.
to me, I think of like, when I feel like I'm being sold, I can't, like, I'm like, where is the exit door? Because I'm
Hmm.
like, I'm sneaking out. It's, to me, it's like we're here, we're advisors, we're trying to advise them because these are their biggest assets. I mean, typically when someone owns a home, right? It's their
Hmm.
inheritance. It's and we don't know what this situation is behind the door. I met with someone last week where they shared very an intimate story that they're 65, they have almost lost everything with a business, and they're selling their home, a single family home that they've been in, and they're moving. And I mean, you sit there at that kitchen table, and to me, it wasn't, I mean, it was so much more. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like, and it was
Hmm.
understanding and being compassionate and understanding, like, this is really, really, really hard, right? So we
Hmm.
talked through for the longest time. I mean, it was not until I think 2 days later that we actually talked about price, because to me, it's like, how can I help them and comfort them? And yes, do I want to, is my job, am I going to get them the best, the highest money? You better believe, because I am going to
Yeah.
work so hard so they can have every dollar. But it was also more about like, what can I help them right now and in terms, because to get their house to that spot,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. That's really good.
Because
Hmm.
you can have the best price, Paul, but if you have a poor presentation online, like, you've
Hmm.
done a disservice to your client, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's easy to toss out a high price, right? It's easy to pick a number out of a hat. It's easy to go, yeah, I think your home's worth 1.2 million.
Hmm.
Tell them what they want to hear. And unfortunately, I think we do see that. I think we do see agents doing this, and sometimes they
Hmm.
win. But I think what you've proven is that there's a much bigger prize at the end of this thing if you take it your strategy. So that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So when you're really quickly here, when you're like digging in, just because this is kind of a question people ask, like people are always kind of like, sometimes agents, especially newer agents, because homes sell so fast, there's not like there's such few homes sometimes, they don't feel like they have
Mhm.
a bunch of comps to pull from. So what are you doing, Lindsay, right now? If you go into a neighborhood, like let's not take a cookie cutter neighborhood where like every home's
Hmm.
identical and it's like
Sure.
one builder built all 150 homes in the neighborhood and you have tons of comps. Like how
Hmm.
are you going about it? Like tell me about how you would price out a home where there's not really an obvious comp. What would you
Yeah,
do?
that's such a good question. So I'm going to tell you, it's not easy, right? Like,
No.
you have to do your homework. And honestly, sometimes if you can run a comp in 10 minutes, I don't think you've done a good job. Like, I'm just
Yeah.
being honest. Like, it takes digging, it takes going back in history. You've talked, by the way, I was telling Paul before this, I binge watched the last like 6 episodes last night. And what I heard over and over was that you have to understand the past 10, 15 years, right? Like, to understand the market, which
Hmm.
I could not agree with that more, is if you look at just like the last year, I stopped telling you much in history. So a lot of these homes, you do have to go back years if there is no comparables. If it's on land, what is the land valued at?
Hmm.
If you were to build it today, kind of and also like what's inside the home. Um, did they just put $50,000 into their yard in landscaping? Like, and also as listing agents, how are we showcasing that online? Because we
Hmm.
talk a lot about pricing, but okay, but then are we also now this price that we've came up to, are we presenting it online in the best way so that the buyer sees that?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
because that's a big thing too, right? And that's why I'm always trying to do a better job at, like, how can I bring that to the buyer when I'm not representing them, but they understand the value before they even go to the home.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like I would tell you that. Now there has been times where I will call on my local appraiser and I'm like, hey, will you do an appraisal for me? Like, so if I'm in a spot where, especially this is maybe a good rule, if someone is representing in the state and there's multiple parties, right? Like you have siblings and they're all fighting because they think something's worth, just pay for an appraisal. Just pay for an appraisal. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
cost you 300 bucks, $350. It's the cost of our doing business, right? But you just pay for an appraisal because then no one feels like there is,
Yeah, there's a
your
little,
bias.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're going, well, we got a third party here
Yep.
who's also saying this
Yep.
price.
So I would tell you that you could always do that if you're struggling with that. But I think it's really just like looking at the area, knowing the area, looking at surrounding, what is the school district, right? Playing a part in. Remember, you pay for school districts. School districts, in my opinion, dictates pricing. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
in certain price school district first, maybe this one's not. And I think it's like going to the drawing board. And also, I think it's like we should not ever be afraid to call someone, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
call maybe a more experienced realtor who lives in that area. Like, if someone called me, I'm always willing to like help anyone, right? I call
Mm-hmm.
people and be like, hey, can you help me? I'm struggling on this. Like, what's
Mm-hmm.
your thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, let me jump in here for a second. So, I just want to get like, do you go to, do you ever check Zillow? Do you ever check realtor.com? Do you ever check, uh, do you go to BSNA? Where do you go?
That's a good question. And I think Michael said this, but yes, I am checking for sure Zillow because not because I'm putting my eggs in that basket, it's because that's what the consumer is looking at. So I think it's like I check Zillow, I check RPR. Those are probably the primary two I'm looking at. You asked about the tax records. I'm pulling stuff up there sometimes before, especially if the previous listings don't have a lot of information. If the basement's finished or if they've pulled permits for outbuilding or anything like that. And I'm also okay at the listing appointment to say, hey, Greg, I want to make sure I'm giving you, the best, because right now you at this point we already have our strategy. You want to know what we should list your home for? I really want to go back to the drawing board and I want to make sure I'm looking at every single thing because after viewing your home, I have saw things that I just want to make sure I'm giving you the right price. So is it okay? Do I have your permission? I can get back to you tomorrow with a price.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to say
Good.
no? Like they're going to be like,
Yeah.
wow, this realtor is going above and beyond because
Yeah.
instead of just throwing a number at someone, right? Like instead they're like, wow, like they're really doing their homework.
Actually, Brian Bovin, Brian, he works in your market all the time.
Yeah.
He texted me. He was like,
He
"Hey,
he's on the other side of this
yeah."
office.
He knows you're on today, and so he was like, "Hey, here's a little thing that he was thinking of, and it's right in line with what you just said."
Yeah.
He said, "Hey, look, he has rushed giving someone a price,
Yeah.
and I think he told me like maybe even two times he had rushed to give someone a price, and he didn't hit the price. Some other realtor was talking to their client. He didn't really realize it. They came in 200 grand higher on a property, and they got the price they wanted." So not only was Brian 200
Mm,
low, but the other person overpriced, went 200 higher than Brian, and then they got the property, which is for and so it stinks. It's a little embarrassing, right? But like his advice was, like you just said, Lindsay, take the time if you're not sure. Like go back to the drawing board. No one's gonna be upset if you want to give a couple 10, 12 more hours to study their home and look over the
yeah.
price. I think that's good advice.
Yeah. I actually think sometimes it's really hard to give a number when if there's not past information and they haven't recently sold, like I actually think it's hard to give a number if you're really doing your job and digging deep because sometimes you'd have, especially if you built a home, right? Like you have no idea. Like
Hmm.
I think it sounds more professional and you do a better job by saying, I will get back to it with a price.
Yeah.
So, if you know that there's other people, other agents that they're going to be talking to,
Hmm.
do you have a strategy in terms of going in first, or do you try to be last?
I don't think I have a strategy. I don't
It's
think
almost like
it,
how do you know sometimes,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well,
I,
they're not always going to tell you, but every now and then they would tell you that, hey, look, we're talking with other people. We want to do our due diligence, right?
hmm
And
hmm
um, and so I had always heard that, it's like you want to be last. Well, I've also seen it where some agents have said they want to be first because if they do a really good job, they can kind of end it and just get the listing and say, hey, look
That's
at,
100%. I
you
like
know,
going in first
and
because
take care of calling these other agents for you so you don't have to even talk to them if you don't want
I
to.
agree. I think just to add chime in, I think going first is way better because you can
Yeah.
set the bar, and then everyone
Yeah.
they're judging everyone against you, and I think that's a much better position to be in.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I could make an argument for either, right? But I don't, honestly, I would encourage people to interview multiple agents if you didn't feel comfortable. I'm going to go back to this is I just think life is about relationships. It's about who you feel you trust, who you feel from the moment, right? The moment you meet someone, right? That you feel confident in them, you feel like they know their stuff, right? We don't know everything, but we should at least be very good with our numbers of what's happening in the market. Like you might not know everything. We have no magic 8 ball, but you could at least
Hmm.
say this is what's happening based on data, right? So you could all of us, it doesn't mean if you're brand new, if you've been in business 30 years, like we could know our data. But I just feel like at the end of the day, to me, um, it's about like it is how I hire people in my life, right? Like it's how I do business and who I pick is who do you have that relationship, right? Like I remember years ago when I was looking at brokerages, right? Let's give it a little shout
Hmm.
out to Five Star here, but like I mean, I was so involved with the GRAR. I knew most of the broker owners. They were my friends, lovely. I loved you guys. I loved how you just cared about the agents. That was your focus. That was your mission, right? Like, and to me, I just knew the moment we sat down, I was like, yeah, this is where I should be. I feel like that's the same with sellers. When they meet
Hmm.
someone, they just know if their intuition feels like, yes, like Paul knows this stuff. I feel like I can trust my biggest, asset with
Hmm.
Paul. He's going to serve me well.
Hmm. No,
So
I think that you're right though. I think that's why I've always felt that like it's not like you've just reiterated a bunch of times. It's that rapport that you build in that process. It's like it's surrounding pricing. Pricing's obviously
Hmm.
part of it, but there's something
Hmm.
else that goes in here. And that's I think
Hmm.
that's kind of like the theme of what we're discussing here in this entire month right now. If I were to like sum what we've been not talking about is like, yeah, pricing plays a role and we all want to price better. And I think we've learned some tips and tricks on how to price. But at the end of the day, like that's really not necessarily the thing, right? It's like just it's like
Hmm.
one element of it. So, but let's dig into pricing real quick, a little bit more
Okay.
specifically here. So you have obviously sold many, many homes in your career. I mean, you know, so you've clearly dealt with dozens of customers who are out to lunch on their price,
Hmm.
right? And you've dealt with dozens of these moments where you're having to negotiate and navigate like what they think their home is worth, what you think their home is worth, and then how do you make this thing work? So
Yeah.
like what do you do if you sit down with me and
Hmm.
I have a $600,000 house and I tell you I'm pretty sure it's worth 825. What are we
um,
doing? Like
yeah.
what are you gonna do with me?
Yep. Yep. So that's why we don't talk number right away.
Okay.
If I'm being honest, at the appointment, we are walking your house as I'm taking lots of notes. As I'm walking through, I'm talking about what buyers are looking for in today's market. So, because I also represent buyers, and so a lot of times
Hmm.
I'm putting my like lens on as a buyer, and while also walking through. So as you're, before we even sit down and talk about numbers, I'm like, yeah. So Paul, like, the hole that, is in the wall, like that stuff's gotta get fit. Like this is
Hmm.
a buyer at Top Point. This is what they're looking for. So like we're kind of like building that rapport, talking through it, walking the
Yep.
house.
You're
We're
demonstrating
gonna,
your expertise, you're
yeah,
demonstrating your knowledge.
we're gonna go through my whole listing presentation I have. So I bring like, and it's all done. I do everything on my iPad. And then in there we're talking through comparables I'm pulling up. So I'm showing them homes, right? So I've already looked at some houses in the area that, and let's just say this is a house I don't feel like I need to come back and tell you a price, right? We're talking
Yep.
about comparables. I'm showing them some stuff. And then we're going to get to the pricing. And I don't give a number because to me it's a range and it's
Yep.
based on strategy. And it's going to be based on what your pain points are, why you want to move. But if you're like, I have 3 kids, my youngest, like we have no time to show our house. We don't, Lindsay doesn't want to keep it up. We have three,
Hmm.
yeah, like you might be more eager to want to sell at a certain price versus someone
Hmm.
who's like, I'm an empty nester. I don't even live here all winter. I'm in Florida. Do you know
Yep.
what I mean? Like it's different, right? So
Hmm.
to me, you have a range, and that's why I never put the number on my reports. Like, so because I will give them comparables, but it's a range.
Okay. Yep.
If that's telling you anything. So,
Yep.
and then if they're like, I'm 825, right? And I really believe you have a $600,000 house, I'm just going to say, Paul, it has been such a pleasure meeting you and Lindsay. Like, you guys are wonderful and I wish you the best love. I just don't think I'm the realtor for you. And I'm not and the reason why I'm saying that is you guys are lovely, but we are very far off on our price. And if I were to take your listing right now, I will give it 125%. I'm going to spend all this money. And you just saw through my whole listing presentation, the things I do and how, and I just know in the first 14 days, we're not going to get traction. And that first 14 days tells us everything about your listing, where we're priced at. And I can tell you right now, we're not going to get showings. And I know that you just expressed to me that you have all this time, but at the end of the day, you know what's going to happen? You're going to be disappointed in me. I'm going to be frustrated, and we're just going to walk away and just not have this great relationship anymore. And my business is on referrals because that you would refer someone to me because you had a good experience. So I just think I'm just not the realtor for you, because I want to give you 110%, and I know I can't deliver that now. And you know what's going to happen, what you're going to say?
Hmm.
Well, I would imagine at least you
Yeah.
probably would
Yeah.
say something like, okay, yeah, like let's look over those comps again. So where do you really think I'm at?
I'd be like, well, hold on.
Yeah,
So, like, okay, so like, I'm at 825, you're at 600. I think is pretty low, Lindsay. But like,
yeah.
what do you think? Like, what do we think about like 720, 715, Lindsay?
Hey, Paul,
Yeah.
let me make this closer. So, okay, so you think the number's 6 to 620, right?
Okay.
They're sitting at about 650 to
Okay,
six.
so let's bring it down. So let's say you get me down to 650, 675, but you're at 615.
Hmm. Hmm.
Are you
I
taking the
think,
listing?
okay, so there's just so many factors here. I will say this. So I want to start by saying this is every realtor does things different, and there is not like a one way is the best way.
Hmm.
I'm only speaking for myself here because I know that, like Jeff, I think said to you guys, like he's willing to take it because he'd rather like sit on it and just then maybe, they would change their mind. That's
Yep.
great. That's just not how I do business. And not that my way's better. I want to be very like everyone does things different. I'm okay with not taking listings, and I have. And people might call me crazy. I truly believe this in my heart and soul. When I do something, I do it 110%. I throw a ton of money at stuff. And we also stage our listings. We can talk a little bit about that in a second. But and I just feel like I really do believe that if I take a listing that I believe in my heart is outside of a range, right? So we're talking range. We're
Yep.
not talking like $15,000 there. We're talking like
Hmm.
if it was enough of like, okay, you're that person's not going to be happy, because then you're going to come back to a price reduction. And there are times in conversations today that I am talking potentially about, price reductions, but no one's happy and no one wins.
Hmm.
In my business, revolves around referrals. Like that's how I've never paid for a lead in my life. It's all someone thinks I do a good job, they pass my name on. And I just, in my heart, feel like those are the moments you're not doing a good job. It's a pain point for the client, it's a pain point for you. My energy is going towards this pain point. This pain point's never going to be happy with me. They're never going to refer me. And it's like, what did I accomplish at the end of the day? To have my name on a sign? I don't care about that. Like, that's
So
just
this is
not what
interesting.
that's not what
Okay.
drives me. That's not what
So this is
drives me.
interesting. Like, and I think we have to pay attention to what you're saying right now because the proof is in the pudding here. And so I have to listen to you and say, okay, like she's an expert here. She knows what she's talking about. So what I hear you saying is that like if I throw my energy into people that believe in me and believe in what I'm doing and believe in my price, I'm going to expand my business much more rapidly than hanging on to a listing where this person and I are not connecting at all. We are not on the same page. This is
Yeah.
going to end up in a difficult situation. And so you're going, my time is limited. I'm going to throw my energy into this thing over here and I'm going to multiply people who love me, people who want to work with me, people who will refer me, because that's really the end of the game, what you're doing here.
Hmm. And I think I go back to like exactly my why. Like I love what I do. I love that I get to work with people. I love like, and I've had bad deals. Like I know what it's like to be in a really rough deal and a deal, where things aren't
Yeah.
going
You've
great.
been there. I've been there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I am in a spot in my life right now where my why is my family, is my kids, is it's serving my clients at 110%, it's serving my community, it's giving back. Like, and if I just if I feel like there's, yes, I could maybe make a commission, I could have my name on it. But if I just don't feel good about it, I'm okay with walking away from a listing. Like, I sleep good at night.
Mhm.
I just that's just how I do business. Like, it's just, so I think, yeah, like, to me, I'm always asking myself, is if I say yes to, if you say yes to something, you potentially are saying no to other things, right? And sometimes we don't
Mhm.
even consciously know what we're saying no to, but
Mhm.
the deals, and we can all think back to the ones that have just kept us up at night, is
Oh,
those ones, right? Like, it's just not worth it, right?
hmm.
Because sometimes those unreasonable people, they're never going to become raving fans. Do you know what I
No.
mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and not that I'm saying not to work with, but I'm just saying, like, if at the first initial appointment, if they're telling you, who is an expert, that you've done your research, confidently, you're going into there, the numbers, the comps, your strategy, what you're going to offer and deliver. And if they're still telling you you're wrong,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I don't know.
I have
let me,
one question. I just want to say we do have one question, so we can, whenever we want to get to the question. But Greg, go ahead
well,
and
you
finish
hold the
your
question.
question.
I'll hold the question for a second. So what I'm thinking about right now is that you've mentioned a couple times about the money and the time that you're going to invest. And I'm
Mhm.
wondering what is it that you're presenting to them in terms of what you're going to do? Because I think what you're really saying is that, look what I'm going to do for you. Look what I'm going to invest for you. Look at the time I'm going to spend for you. So you can understand then why I don't want to mess around with your undoable price, right?
Hmm.
Mhm.
So can you give us a little taste of what it is that you're telling them you're going to do for them to help bring that thing to a conclusion?
Yeah, that's a good thing. So, good question. So, part of my listing presentation, and I'm going to tell you this: if I'm listing a home that's 300,000, or if I'm listing a house, I don't know, it's a million plus, right? Like, yes, there might be some fundamentally things I do a little obviously different, but like, all of them are getting, I'm going to tell you this is, we do I do staging in my listings. So staging could result in me bringing items in, so I'm working now with a stager, or I have a team member who works with me, and we go and we actually stage ourselves, which people are like, how do you have time? It fuels me. I love it. I have a background in design, so to me, I love all of that. And we stage our properties because, to me, like I said, you could have a good price, but a good price with a poor presentation, I think you've already left money on the table for your client, in
Hmm.
my opinion. We all know stage properties, what do they say? 15% they bring back higher in, a resale. And so I'm going through that. So part of my listing presentation, Greg, is talking about, what am I doing? I talk about, the people who work with me, right? And I'm showing them, this is what you're seeing on social media. This is what you're seeing with what we're going to do before and after photos. Like, I'm showing them real life stuff. So when we even get to the number, they already are like, oh, wow, this is what I'm getting with Lindsay. This is what the money she's investing, right? I pay for it all out of pocket, nothing comes out of it, and it all comes out at the closing table, out of proceeds.
Hmm.
So we're talking through that. So part of it is, hopefully they're recognizing the value, right? It's also a value that they're getting with someone who feels experienced.
Sorry.
Okay. All right, Paul, you had a question.
Yeah, sorry about that. I can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Allie P down in St. Pete has a question. And so in St. Pete, you're nearing sort of like a 4.5 month supply, 3.5 to 5 something, depending on condo, single family area. So they're definitely shifted into a very neutral territory right now. I would say, like, maybe leaning slightly seller
Hmm.
side still, but they're very much in the neutral territory, like about to tip possibly into um a buyer side, and they've definitely come off of their peaks. So in St. Pete and Tampa's position, you have people who bought 2 years ago who paid more than their home is worth today.
Hmm.
So they're upside down. They're negative equity at this point. So really, Allie's question, and Lindsay, I'm sure you've dealt with this too, where people have upside down equity. But
Yeah.
what's the conversation look like when you start talking to someone and you start to realize this is going to be a negative equity position. These people are going to be
Hmm.
writing a check. They might be, I mean, and if they don't have cash, we could potentially be looking at short sale. We could potentially be looking at other options. I mean, foreclosure being the furthest one down the path because it's just the worst for the credit. But um,
Hmm.
Lindsay, what do you do in that situation? I mean, I've personally been in that position with sellers dozens and dozens and dozens of times because I worked through the Great Recession. But I'm
Hmm.
curious what your take is on how you navigate that scenario, like with empathy, but also like reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Allie, that's a tough one. And I have been in that spot. And by the way, I have recently been seeing that people who have bought homes less than 2 years ago, right now, they're not, if you're looking at the market, they're selling for
No,
under.
because they're looking
Um,
at their closing costs, they're looking at
yes,
all of it, right?
yes. So it is starting to trickle here too. I would say this is uh we have to be honest with the client. Like as much as like we have empathy and by all means, but we have to be honest. We have to provide data. We have to provide facts. And they're hard conversations and they're not easy, right? But um, you have to rip off that band-aid and you have to tell them like what's happening because if we kind of sugarcoat it or not, or we try to inflate it in a price that they're never going to get, like I just think we we can't change the market, right? What was when we had Jared James here, he said we can't control the market, we can only control the marketing. Do you remember
Mhm.
he said that? And I thought that was
Yeah,
so good.
we are not market makers. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, the way that Greg and I say it is like we cannot control the tides of pricing. All we can do is react to to
Hmm.
the water and the
Yeah.
water levels. We cannot control it.
100%. So I always ask myself in those moments, and I'm trying to always think outside the box, like what can I do? And um, I one time this was years. I mean, this was years ago when someone didn't have any. It was kind of like a situation. I was doing open houses, like, but what I would do is I literally called everyone in that county who literally had houses. And I said, I
Mhm.
am putting together group open houses, right? I'm going to advertise your house. I will create all of the marketing. You just have to hold your house open. And people are like,
Mhm.
why would you do this? Like, that was always like, why are you? And I'm like, because I want my house sold. I want your house sold. And how do we get people? We collaborate together because the more you have stuff in the collaboration, right? You work together. Remember, other realtors are, yes, maybe they're your competition, but we should be looking at other realtors as like our allies. Like we
Mhm.
work together. And so doing stuff like that, because if you get more marketing out as a group, you're going to get more people in the doors. Why Meyer doesn't just build a Meyer store by nothing else. They build it by Target, because they know that, right? And it's the same
Mhm.
with us and our houses and how we do our marketing. So I would just start to like think in any like little way, like outside the like door of what can you do, to advertise this listing to get it sold.
But you also said you have almost like a doctor's approach to it, where it's like, you know what? Like sometimes you have to deliver really difficult news as a doctor, and as a
Hmm.
realtor, sometimes we have to deliver very difficult news, like you're in a tough equity position, and there might be
Yeah.
nothing that we can do, and that's where
Yeah.
you have that conversation saying, look, this is what we're up against. These are the numbers. Um, and I will tell you from my own personal experience because I cut my teeth in the Great Recession. So I was first licensed in 2006. And the Great Recession began, I think it began that year. A lot of people say it hit in 2008, but we all felt it slipping from 2006 onward. And then it dropped off a cliff in 2008. But the number of times I was sitting at a listing table talking to someone who was upside down was pretty much, well, I can tell you, 67% of every single sale that we did was upside down. So we were just about 7 out of 10 people we worked with were upside down. Greg, you remember this very, very well as well.
I
And
don't
it's
remember that.
it's just as you put it, Lindsay. It's a very kind honesty. You have
Yes.
to be totally transparent about it so that like they can see their options clearly faster. And so like there's no sense in letting them live in la la land. Like maybe, just maybe
No.
I can pull off a miracle for you. Like we all want to do that. And I think our desire in that moment is to give them a miracle. Like every one of us wants to make a miracle happen for you right now. The reality is we might not be able to. So
Yep.
yeah, so I think that you're right up front. You have to try to give them the biggest dose of reality that you can. Um, but and come up with a plan. But like I would also be thinking like, okay, so it's kind of follow along with Ali's line of questioning here. So they're upside down. The question now becomes, do you have to sell or do you want to sell? Right?
Mhm.
Because if you have to sell, then we have to consider like, okay, you're upside down. Do we need to sell some 401k? Do we need to look into borrowing money from an in-law? Do we have to talk to the bank about restructuring some of your loan here in a short sale position? Like you have to begin having these real conversations like an attorney would talk to you. An attorney's not going to
Yeah,
blow smoke at you. An attorney's going to go, hey, these are your options. And so I
a
think we
hundred
have to shift
percent.
into that mode.
You become
Yeah.
become a counselor, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And it's thinking outside the box. And, you know, one thing I would say is, and I know this is off the subject, but about being we're the experts. We have to be honest. We have to be direct. My husband's a firefighter, and unfortunately, he goes to scenes where someone has died, right? And
Hmm.
you have family members there. He literally will look at someone, and not that he doesn't have empathy, but he will say, Greg, Paul is dead. And he has to use those direct words, because if you start to say, he's not responding, or like people
Yeah.
hold
It's
on this
like,
whole, you know what I mean? And it's not because you don't have empathy. It is not because you don't care. It's not because you don't want to, but you have to be direct, because people will hold on to any little word and then they will misconstrue that. And I feel like when you're going to a number, Allie, where someone doesn't have money, or they need more than they have, like it is like, your house is worth X dollar. I understand that you need this money. We have to think, how can you do that? So maybe, Paul, it is alternative financing. If it's borrowing
mhm.
from somewhere, if it's they're taking a hit and now they're pulling the money from their 401k to bring it to the table. It's tough conversations, but remember, we are the experts, and that's why they pay us the money they do.
Exactly. Because
Yes.
So
if they need to buy something else, like let's say they're moving to North Carolina and they need to buy a house in North Carolina, then going short sale is not going to work for them because they need their credit intact. So you have to begin strategically talking through like what can we do? Maybe, exactly. Like, we need to figure out creative solutions here, like temporarily emptying out a 401k for a little while to do this. These are real conversations that we would have every single day when the market flips and you have people who are in that position where equity is right here. um, okay.
Well, that's the value add that we need to bring to the table, right? Like it's constantly thinking outside the box, thinking of other areas, and it's talking, right? I think that's the one thing I have learned the longer I'm in the business is, I'm always trying to be like a student, right? Like I call upon people all over, like other areas, people I've met throughout the country. It's like ideas like, how can I do this better, right? Because once you think you're the best at it, you stop learning, and you're going to
Hmm.
realize someone else, like you're not serving your client, you're not serving yourself, you're not serving anyone well. So I think it's just to always like be a student and always ask questions and be curious.
Hmm.
And
I
that's how
think
you
that
bring value.
I think those are the all through the theme of this conversation right now is pretty much summed up with what you just said.
Hmm.
And I will add one thing that, a creative thing I did years ago. I had a buyer or a seller wanted to sell, they wanted to buy something else, they wanted to downsize. They couldn't do it, they had no equity. So I ended up saying, I'll tell you what, if you are going to buy something else with me, I will reduce my fees down to what I can possibly do to help you in order to help you buy the other house where I can get paid.
Hmm.
I actually, I mean, it's like, so I'm not saying I'm the good Samaritan here necessarily, because I was still wanting to
Hmm.
make money. But again,
Hmm.
it was a solution of, well, I'm not going to make anything if we just sit here with this house, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't do you any disservice either, giving you this giant false sense of hope that I can maybe pull this off when the numbers and the
Mm-hmm.
activity are showing you like it's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, and this is where it gets even more important that we have these honest conversations. So I'm going to go back to Ali real quick again. If we're in a marketplace where we're actively seeing pricing drop, the longer you are keeping your customer in a sense of false hope, you are costing them actual dollars.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lindsay, my last question is, in your marketplace, are prices flat? Are they still increasing? Yeah, and I'm talking in general. There's always going to be the exceptions, but just
Yeah.
in general, what's happening?
Well, I mean, if you look at the data right now, so I mean, Grand Rapids, Kent County, I mean, prices are gradually going up, but days on market are also going up. It's just because we have low inventory. That's what's keeping, in my opinion, us probably a little bit better than Florida. We just don't have much inventory on the market. But I'm gonna say this is, I was actually thinking about this today as I was just like looking through everything. Since January, I've put five buyers under contract. Four of the buyers, um, I have put under contract, and if I had to figure out the percentage, and I can do this later, and I can jump in and tell
Mhm.
everyone, but I want to say the deals that they got was out of this world. Like there was one listing that they started at 670. I put them under a contract at 563.
Mm-hmm.
And they were
Mm-hmm.
priced I mean, but like once again, like what do I think that is in the market right now? But Greg, I think pricing, people have been pricing too high. They didn't realize even come. I mean, I started feeling the shift last June. Like last June, I could feel it starting to slow down in my like you could just feel it, right? So you start to price things a little bit different. You're we need to be before, not after, right? Like so we need to be, too often we're just responding to the market instead of, being in front of the market, and we have to be in front of, that's part of our job as professionals, is to understand what's happening. um Rates, this play a huge part in it, right? Right now they're like, today they're like 6% if you didn't buy points or anything. That's right. But the
Mm-hmm.
difference if they go down just even, a hair, right? Like how many more buyers are entering the market? Our first time home buyer, just what, 40 is now the age, 40
Yeah.
nationwide. Like that's incredible. Think about that,
Yeah.
Greg. Think about like when you started first selling real estate, if you knew a first time home buyer was 40 years old, like how many houses have they lost out on that appreciation, right? Like, because it was probably what,
Mm-hmm.
22 was the average age probably for the first time home buyer when you
Well,
first started selling?
I can tell you that myself and a lot of my friends, we all were buying homes. We got married. Everybody got married younger. We were all 22, 23, 21 years old. And we all were buying our first home by the time we were 23, 24, 25.
Hmm.
And now again, prices were, but again, it's all relative, right? It's like, what were you making then? What are you making today?
Hmm.
And but I think that when I look at the market, I've seen this before when things are slowing, the public is all and the public and the media are always behind, right? They never
Hmm.
have the latest information. You have the latest information right now. You're seeing it yourself. And what we're seeing is that we were on a rocket ship going up with prices for the last 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
If we slow and we level, every seller is going to think that they're losing money. They're going to say,
Yeah.
I'm losing money at that number. And you're going, no, no, no. It didn't drop. It just flattened. It leveled.
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
somehow we have to have that conversation in these marketplaces where we've had this shift. And I think everybody's going to deal with it at some point. But
Yep.
so people used to always say to me, well, I'm losing money. And I'd say, well, how do you lose something you've never had?
Yeah, or a
Yeah.
price reduction feels like a loss, right? You're like, I'm
Yeah.
giving it up. I'm giving up money. It's like you haven't given up anything yet because it's
You
not
haven't given
real.
up anything. Exactly. Yes.
Um,
But
Well,
that's where,
well,
like, that's where being the expert of like what's happening, data, like in talking through that, right? Like we have to just come to the table when we first meet someone, and just we have to be the advisor that knows, the expert of like what's happening in the market, because a
mhm,
lot of it is being able to have those tough conversations and redirect someone out of false illusion, right?
mhm,
yeah,
mhm.
yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
Lindsay, we have gone 43 minutes. Can you believe it? It seemed
No.
like 15.
Huh?
Um,
It's like talking to a good friend.
yeah, yeah. But I think there was one more question that maybe you can just quickly clarify. Sarah was curious how you handle the cost of staging. Do you like
Mm.
do you pay for it up front? Do you pay for it at the closing table? Do you reimburse yourself at the closing table? Like how do you do that?
Okay, so good question, Sarah. I guess it would depend on what kind of staging. So if I am going in and I'm staging someone else and it's just me and then my team member, um, I just pay for that. That's all just what I
Part of
bring
the
to the
package.
table. Yep. If we are bringing in like full on furniture, then typically, and honestly, it all depends on the situation, but either the client pays for it or I'm splitting it or I'm paying it. It just kind of depends. And I hate to say that generalize, it just depends on the situation. This one client who I was just talking about, who I will be listing their house, I'm bringing stuff in, who shared with me that they didn't have anything. This like I'm paying for that.
Mhm.
That's just what I do. I always will say this: I'll be the first to write a check,
Mhm.
or do stuff for someone if it, if it's helping someone. Um, yeah. So I don't know if I
So you
answered
don't
your
really have, there's no
question.
real strategy. It's
Yeah.
like sometimes they might contribute, sometimes they're paying, sometimes you're paying.
Yeah.
Before the closing, after the closing, it doesn't really matter. There's
Yeah.
no real
But when I
strategy.
bring like my team members in and we stage houses full on, which a lot of times that's very successful, like that's all out of my own pocket. I pay for
Mhm.
everything. So like no one's paying for any of that stuff.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. It's just the value. It's part of the value of when you hire me.
Okay. Well,
Alrighty, well,
thank you
Lindsay,
for so
thank you.
much for sharing all of your
Yeah.
like wisdom and tips and your philosophy with us. That was
Yeah.
really
Well,
awesome.
and I'm always happy to help anyone if they have questions. I might not know it all, but I can at least just share what I've learned or,
Cool.
continue to learn. Right. So,
Yeah.
That's
Awesome.
what we
Well,
appreciate. We
what was that,
appreciate
Greg?
share. We appreciate people that are willing to share, and you can never outgive what you get back.
mhm.
And I'm just convinced of that in life, what I've witnessed. And so Lindsay's willingness to share, I believe, will come back tenfold.
Yep.
So thank you.
Well, thank you, Lindsay, and we
Uh,
really appreciate it. And you might see questions popping in here, but so maybe jump back in and check it
yep.
out and see if there's any questions for you. But we're super thankful you were here to join us, and I know the agents were too. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All
Have a great day.
All right. See you
right.
guys. All
Bye.
right.
See ya.
Bye bye.